This has been very disappointing for my sons, I should add. What's your take on how this plays out?
Yeah, look, I think these types of issues in baseball were inevitable. I think when you think about the logistics that they have of traveling, the number of games, the frequency of games, stuff like this was bound to come up. It's all about how they handle it. I think, there's a lot of people working very hard to figure out how to make it safe. I'm an optimist that they'll still figure it out. But it's probably going to mean tightening down on some of the restrictions and protocols that they've put in place and going a step further than they've gone already. And so I think they'll figure it out, but there'll be some bumps in the road.
So how is this impacting your business and the world of online sports betting, the delayed return of sports in general?
So from our perspective, the business has actually performed really well. We have the broadest variety of sports and products that people can play. That's meant that our business has held up really, really well during this whole period. That said, people like certainty, right? I think you're going to see people that are sad if baseball gets disrupted. But at the end of the day, there's always things that people can watch. There's plenty of European sports back. There's obviously the NBA, and we do think the NFL will play. So there will always be something for somebody to do on one of our sites.
As you just said, basketball restarted last night in Orlando, and they're taking a different approach than baseball. What kind of activity did you see on your platform compared to normal times?
It was the biggest night of NBA that we've ever had. Most number of users, most amount of handles. So demand was off the charts.
So how do you expect that to play out, given that there's probably some pent-up demand here, right?
Yeah, I think there's pent-up demand, but I think at the end of the day, it's been pent up for 4 or 5 months. And so I think you're going to see a really busy August that rolls right into NFL kicking off. I think you're going to obviously have a lot less college sports, and college is a huge part of that business. And so I think you'll see that down, but I think you'll see sports like the NBA and NHL offset that loss.
Meantime, the Massachusetts Senate this week dropped a big sports betting component from an economic development bill that I know you've been following closely. How optimistic, I know you said you're an optimist, how optimistic are you about online sports getting legalized in Massachusetts and the rest of the country?
We're very optimistic. I think even pre-COVID, what you started to see through New Jersey and Pennsylvania was a very clear acceptance that legalizing sports betting was just common sense legislation. To have a competitive mobile marketplace protected consumers, raised tax revenues, and gave constituents something that they wanted to do. And so we were seeing momentum even pre-COVID, and we think that will accelerate coming out of COVID. You will certainly see states like Massachusetts where idiosyncratic factors may create bumps in the road in terms of the law getting done. It may create delays, but when you look in aggregate, we think you're going to see a lot more states passing online sports betting and frankly online gaming too.
How are your customers evolving in the pandemic? Are you seeing new kinds of people, given that other outlets may not be available to them in terms of entertainment?
We have seen some retail shift. So in our online casino business and our online horse racing business, both of those verticals have a big chunk of the market that's done at retail and brick and mortar. And when those closed down, we saw a big chunk of kind of retail first customers show up. And even as retail is reopening, we're keeping a lot of that business as well.
So how is Fanduel evolving its strategy to meet new kinds of demand, if you will, in the midst of continued uncertainty? Look, the virus is resurging across the United States, in different places around the world. And if there's one thing we know about the next 6 months, it's that we don't know what those months are going to hold.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what we're doing is just trying to expand our product offering. I've been really proud of the creativity of the team, and a lot of that creativity has come in the form of free-to-play games. The beauty of free-to-play is you can spin them up quickly. You have a lot more latitude in terms of what you can do. And the mission that we've given our team is really just keep people engaged and give them something to do during what's a period where, as you correctly note, there's not a lot to do or not a lot of other forms of entertainment. And so our biggest focus has been on expanding our product offering to make sure that we can account for any eventuality.
So what kind of new products are you talking about or thinking about?
So we've done everything from, in the depths of the pandemic when there was, almost no sport on, we were doing a lot around esports. And that was a lot of fantasy esports. And then we were also doing a lot of free to play games, even around kind of simulated, NFL seasons or MLB games where literally people were building a fantasy lineup based on historic simulations. And so, again, it was just all about creating a way for people to be entertained.
Quickly, do you imagine that the sports business will be forever changed by this? And if so, how?
I think the biggest impact on the sports business is probably going to be one, I think the return to stadiums and full stadiums will just take time, not because necessarily for public health reasons, but I think there will be a chunk of people that are uncomfortable in crowded spaces. And so I think you'll see challenges around attendance for probably a prolonged period. And then I think probably the biggest issue is the acceleration in cord cutting that's occurring during COVID. I think is going to change how people consume sports. You're going to see a lot more streaming of sports and a lot more changes in kind of how people consume sports media. And I think that'll probably be the most lasting change.